Hi there. This is a little guide to how to max the 20-mark question on the AS1 Germany paper. So, this is a source analysis question on one source. Stick very closely to that 20 to 25 minutes, okay, no longer, because you're going to end up all your time, which is going to then lead to, 30 markers, half your mark. So, you need to get onto that as quickly as possible. So, spend 5 minutes reading the source, annotate it as much as possible, try to put it apart. Make sure you're looking at the question, make sure you understand the question, what it's asking for. And then you're doing a 20-minute write-up, okay? So 20 minutes to write up following this CO-DAMMAT, okay? So that should really help you out. Content analysis is the main focus. Don't spend all your time on DAMMAT. It's really, really important you understand that. A lot of weaker students spend very little time on the content and then spend too much time on the DAMMAT, okay? Content is key. So include overall judgment in the end, just a very short conclusion. Ensure all points are linked to utility, usefulness. This is all about usefulness, value, okay? So please remember to refer back to that. And you have to try to consider both strengths and limitations. Okay, so make sure you stick really closely to that CO-DAMMAT. You have to go through this, okay? So CO-DAMMAT is key. Content is the vital first element. You have to look at all the key parts of that source, try to get as many quotes as possible, and work out how useful it is in regards to the question being asked. This should be the most substantial section of your answer. Use lots of quotes from the source and make sure that you use your contextual knowledge to back it up. Okay, we'll try to show you that in the example here. Omissions. You have to be able to work out, well, look, focus on the question, what is missing, what is not there that you should expect, to be for the focus of that question. Date, is it valuable? You should have, yes, perhaps no. Sometimes you can have both. Author, again, who is the author? What are they? Do they represent a group? Do they give an opinion? Do they give an insight? Just remember that even if it's a very biased point of view, that's still useful because you're getting across that idea of why they believe something, okay? But yeah, you obviously have to make sure you mention that that might be from a biased source. Mode, what is the mode? Is it a diary? Is it a letter? Is it a speech? If it's a speech, well, it's going to be a speech to a particular audience that should link up. And obviously, what they're saying links to the mode, A letter, well, letter's going to be much more private. Maybe you'll put across your opinions a lot more easily. Diary is the same. You don't expect a diary to be read by anybody. It's a very private thing, but that makes the thoughts that you're putting down a lot more valid. Just be aware of diaries that they sometimes people can actually expect to then publish their diaries later on. Okay, so it could perhaps play a part in that. Motivation. What motivated them to actually make the source or write the source? So what motivations are there? If they're making a speech, well, what are they trying to get from their audience? And the audience is also key. Who is that audience? Is that useful or not? If it's like a bunch of Nazis and it's a Nazi speaker, well, that does make it maybe slightly less useful, okay? Or perhaps it could be useful in some ways as well. Tone. Is there any clear tone to the source? Is it fearful, angry, determined? Use words, phrases to try to show this. Sometimes even like grammar, like exclamation marks, are very good to actually show you what somebody's thinking. Or different words. Sometimes words mean an awful lot. Okay, so let's look at this waggle. Okay, so it's a caput. It's an extract from a proclamation issued by the SPD, members of the Weimar coalition government, before they fled from Berlin to Stuttgart in response to the caput in March 1920. The proclamation was signed by President Friedrich Ebert and Chancellor Gustav Bauer. So it says a military putsch has started. The mercenaries, who are afraid that their Freikorps regiments would be disbanded, have made an attempt to overthrow the Republic and establish a dictatorial government with Kapp and General von Lüttwitz at its head. We did not make a democratic revolution, only to have it overthrown by a Freikorps regiment. We call upon all workers to support a general strike. And your question is, how useful is this source for an historian studying the threats from the right faced by the Weimar Republic? So the threats from the right, okay? So you have to be very aware of that question as you're going through. So how do you attempt to go through this? Well, you should be annotating, writing lots of things down on your page whenever you get this type of a source. And you should then follow this direction, okay? So you start off always with the content, okay, and try to follow this example here. So you can see source one explains that the putsch commenced because, and try to use this, the blue here. So the source is useful because it tells us that. And then you put in the quote that you want. Quotes are so valuable. It shows you're using the source. That's what it's all about here. So you put in the quote, but then you have to explain it. And a lot of students either put in the quote or else explain, but they don't use quotes as much. You have to make sure you do both. So quote, then really good explanation, then give an example. You can see this here, okay? So source one explains the putsch commenced because the mercenaries who are afraid that the Freikorps regiments would be disbanded. That's really useful. So we're going to quote that there and then say why it's useful. So it's extremely useful because it provides us with a reason for the cap putsch. And then I'm going to put in my knowledge. A key term of the Treaty of Versailles was that the German army was reduced to 100,000. A request to disband was given. A brigade of 5,000 of strong ties to the Freikorps refused the order, and instead they seized key government buildings and encouraged a march on Berlin. So I've used the source, I've explained it, I've given lots and lots of good examples here from my own knowledge. Okay, so started off well. Well, you continue with that there, plundering of the source for information. So I'm going to use this one now. Okay, so it explains the aims of the putsch is to overthrow the Republic and establish a dictatorial government with Kapp and von Lüttwitz at its head. And I explain it. Okay, so politically, the Weimar Republic, Democratic Weimar Republic, was not popular. The army, big supporter of the Kaiser. Many worked actively against the new democracy, and then the Treaty of Versailles was regarded as a diktat. Okay, and von Lüttwitz and Wolfgang Kapp team up to try to seize control and form a national association. Why is this valuable? Well, it demonstrates the attitude of the Social Democrats to the attempted overthrow. We did not make a democratic revolution only to have it overthrown by a Freikorps unit. Why is that valuable? Well, this is valuable as it illustrates that the Weimar Republic was remaining committed to their new democracy as part of the new Weimar Constitution. And then explain it, okay? So it's a major point of contention for right-wing groups because they preferred autocratic Germany that they would have had under the Kaiser, okay? And explains here who's instigating the violence, the Freikorps, and you have to explain who they are, okay? So moving on, you're still using content here. So finally, the source adds value in terms of its content. As it states, we call upon the workers to support a general strike. What is so good about that? Well, we know that this implies what is used to destroy the cap putsch. We know that a strike brought the putsch down. So we explain that. Okay, we go through and explain about how all the key public services were shut down. And after 4 days of struggling without these necessities, the putsch was forced to end. Okay, good. So what do we have then next? Well, we've got omissions. So omissions, what is not there that we really expect? Well, the source is limited due to omissions. It does not make reference to multiple reasons for the putsch. It doesn't say about Germany recovering from the hardship of the war. It doesn't say about repaying the reparations. It doesn't make explicit reference to the Treaty of Versailles, okay, which actually does cause the putsch directly, and fails to address that the Democratic Weimar Republic was not popular, stable, or accepted. Another limitation is that as the source is an immediate reaction to the putsch, there's nothing there about the aftermath of the putsch, how it ultimately failed. And the question is all about right-wing attacks, so it doesn't actually tell us anything about Munich, 1923, and Adolf Hitler. Okay, so that's your O taken care of. What about the date? Well, you can sometimes use the two sides to the date. So the date of this source is particularly useful as it was written and published in March 1920. Why is that useful? Well, it's an honest reaction to the putsch. It's valuable to understand the government's initial reaction and their comprehension of the events. But I've got a however here. Due to the source being published in early 1920, it does not provide us with a comprehensive overview of the right-wing threats from 1920 to 1923. That's what the question's about. So that there's an element that's missing because of the date is really focused on Kapp. What about the author? Well, the author of the source is the SPD. It doesn't say exactly who. It's SPD, and they're in coalition government at the time. Therefore, as government representatives, they'd be expected to have a full understanding of what is happening around them. It's very useful because of that. It's also valuable because it provides us with the Social Democrats' point of view and also the determination to destroy the putsch by strike. On the other hand, as a left-wing party, they do not represent right-wing opponents of the Weimar government and are not in a position to fully understand or appreciate the reasons for the putsch in the first place, nor the actions they plan to take. The Social Democrats, they are in a biased position, are more likely to be critical or even dismissive of right-wing threats. So we've got both sides covered there. What about the mode? Well, the mode of the source is a proclamation to the people of Berlin. A proclamation is used to encourage and support an end to the putsch. It makes the proclamation is very useful. Okay, it's informative, it's direct, it's from a very key source, and it's aimed at the people of Berlin. Okay, it's expected that the source will be detailed and accurate further in its utility. However, in order to guarantee an end to the putsch, the source can be considered limited, as they may exaggerate or omit information to maintain their own position. This is the case as the proclamation omits that the Social Democrats actually fled Berlin, a fact that would potentially have weakened the public's support of the Weimar government, which is already precarious. Audience, be quite specific about that. So for this, the German public, in particular the trade unions and workers, are key here, okay, because they need to get them to go on strike. So it's aimed at them. They're mentioned. We know that it is they who would be most concerned with the potential military dictatorship. We also know it is they that have the power to go on strike in massive numbers. Finally, tone. So how is the tone useful? Well, usually it highlights the resolve of the government in this case, and it's direct in how they will solve this crisis. We call upon all workers to support a general strike, so it's quite authoritative, okay, what they're going to do. However, there are elements of bias which limits the utility of the source, as they are tempted to critique and belittle the strikes of the Freikorps, because they call them the mercenaries. That word mercenaries, people who get paid for their services. So it's a real slur in the Freikorps. On the other hand, the language used to describe the government promotes the strength and capabilities of the Weimar democracy. We did not make a democratic revolution, only to have it overthrown by a Freikorps regiment, okay? So it shows that the source is definitely not impartial. It's using very strong language, okay? Mercenaries. This makes it slightly limited. And then in conclusion. So in conclusion, this source is useful to understand the initial reaction and initial resolution to the Kapp putsch. It is useful in appreciating the government's response. However, it does not fully address the actions of the government and omits key results of the Kapp putsch and fails to fully address the full period of 1920 to 23, with the focus only on the Kapp putsch and no other right-wing uprisings, which the question's about. So I hope this is useful for you. You have to really make sure you follow that guidance. CO-DAMMAT, C in particular, the content is key. Spend a lot of time, writing down the quotes and explaining the quotes, giving evidence, giving your knowledge. That's absolutely key. And then the omissions, what's not there, and then working through your DAMMAT. Okay. Sometimes the DAMMAT, just remember you can actually use both sides. Some things are useful, but they're also limited. So make sure you bear that in mind whenever you do the